Hello, today we're going to talk about types of quadrilaterals. Quadrilaterals are shapes with four sides. They are flat, two-dimensional shapes with four sides. So, to look at some common quadrilaterals, we have our rectangle, our trapezoid, our square, and our rhombus. And now let's talk about how we can classify these four different types of quadrilaterals. I like to think of them as a family, and the different members of the family all have different qualities. So first, let's talk about this word called parallelogram. Parallelogram. What that means is that the sides that go across, so the sides that are opposite each other, are parallel. And that just means we could stretch them out forever in both directions and they would never ever cross. So if we look at our rectangle, we can tell a rectangle is a parallelogram because these two sides would never cross and these two sides would never cross. If you look at a square is also a parallelogram because these two sides, if we stretch them out, they would never intersect or cross, and neither would these. Let's take a look at our rhombus. Our rhombus is also a parallelogram because even though we have these corners that seem different, the sides are still parallel, which means they would never ever cross even if they got really, really long. But let's take a look at the trapezoid. Do you think this is also a parallelogram? I can tell that the top and bottom sides, that these opposite sides are parallel. They would never cross. It's okay if they're not the same length, but these two sides are parallel and would never cross. But these sides here, I bet if I pushed forward, my fingers would meet, which means the lines would cross. So a trapezoid only has one set of parallel lines, not two, which means it's not a parallelogram. It is a quadrilateral because it has 1, 2, 3, 4 sides, but it's not a parallelogram. Our parallelograms are our rhombus, square, and rectangle. All right, now let's talk about our rectangle. Our rectangle has two sets of parallel sides, 1, 2, and it has corners or vertices at 90 degrees. And that means it's right like where your wall meets the ceiling. Or where your ceiling meets the wall is that flat corner. It's exactly like the corner of a book, and it measures 90 degrees. A rectangle has two sets of parallel lines and 4 corners or vertices, each corner or vertice measuring at 90 degrees. Now let's compare that to a rhombus. A rhombus also has 2 sets of parallel lines and 4 vertices. It is a parallelogram. These are both parallelograms, but is a rhombus a rectangle? It has the sides. It has 4 vertices, but are these equal? Like you could put it right in the corner and it would be exactly flat? Let's compare. Do you see how there's space right there? We can see that this has a 90-degree angle and this does not. So if you have 4 lines, all the sides are equal length. So this side is as long as this side, and this side is as long as this side and this side. They're all the same equal length, but the corners do not measure 90 degrees. Looking at the rectangle, are all of these sides equal? No, they're not. These two sides are equal to each other, but they're longer than these two sides. These two sides are also equal to one another. So now, let's go ahead and talk about a square. If you have a square, the rules for being a square is you have to be a parallelogram. It is true, it's a parallelogram. These lines or sides are parallel with these lines or sides. It has to have 4 vertices or 4 corners. It has to have all equal length sides. So these sides are all the same length. And every single corner has to measure to 90 degrees. Just like the rectangle had corners or vertices that measured to 90 degrees, this has the same quality, except this one has sides that are all the same length, and this one does not. If we look at a square and a rhombus, the difference between a square and a rhombus is that these vertices do not measure 90 degrees. It does have 4 equal sides. It does have 2 sets of parallel lines, but the corners are different, and that's how we can classify these different shapes. All right, now you know about types of quadrilaterals.